because the buyer's probably going to be closing my business down and they'll all be made redundant, and I can't let that happen to my people. So, it does happen. Be hard-nosed about it, but be aware that that could very likely take place. I'm going to have to just skim through these very quickly now. The 5 steps are these. Establishing the seller's need. So you need to determine what you want out of it. So A, do you want to sell? B, what sort of value do you want out of it? And what structure do you want out of it? It's highly unlikely that you'll get the full value paid in cash up front. Highly unlikely. So what will happen is that you'll probably get a proportion of the value of the business in cash on day one, but then the rest of it will be deferred. It could be deferred for 1 year, it could be deferred for 2 years. You could be on an earn-out, so where your payment is dependent on the business achieving certain objectives as well. So you need to think of how that works for you, because you want to sell and you want to make sure that you achieve something out of it. So define what your needs are. Preparing the sale document. That's the document that effectively goes to the buyers and says this is what the business is all about, etc., etc. Marketing the business. I'm afraid we're going to have to scan through some of these. Negotiating the deal and the due diligence, but we've sort of talked about these a little bit. So I'll let you just read that. And this is talking about trying to get a professional valuation. The business is only valued at what anybody will buy it at. You might have a view about it. Your professional advisors will give you probably a better commercial view of what the business is valued at in relation to similar businesses, their experience in the marketplace, what kind of sector it is, what your balance sheet looks like, what net assets you've got, what the cash flow of the business is, and there's no single dimension that can value the business. You will have a feel for it, you'll have a target price, they'll come and if you use one, and they'll either give you an indication that is similar to what you're thinking about or something completely different. And then you can take the decision as to whether you still want to go ahead with the sale. Because if they come back and they tell you it's only worth half what you think it is, then you've got a decision to make. Do you really want to go ahead with that or not? But it's better to know now than after spending potentially more money and time going through the sale process. So try and do that early if you can. Listen to what they say. As I say, they've got a benefit. That's an important point. If there's more than one seller involved, and we talked about the minority shareholder that suddenly crept out of the woodwork, but in any event, if there's more than one seller involved, and whether that's a husband and wife team or whatever it is, you all need to be agreed on it, because at the end of the day, you're all going to be selling your share of the business, and if there's any dispute between you, then a buyer will just walk away. They won't be interested unless there's absolute agreement between the sellers. Multiple shareholders will cause problems. Whether they're small, medium or large, they will just cause some problems. Try and make the sale document accurate. It needs to be to the best of your knowledge. It needs to be an honest document that shows the business properly. Don't try and hide anything in there. It'll get found out. Almost inevitably, down the line, 90% plus, as I say, it'll come out in the woodwork, and it'll mean that the buyer suddenly loses their trust in you. So what it does is essentially that. Explain what the business does, brief history, why you're selling, give some information about why you're selling, what you want to be doing. They're worried, what the hell are you going to do afterwards? You're the expert in this field. There will be non-compete clauses, no doubt, but they're not easy to operate. So they'll be worried that you're going to sell and then suddenly start in competition again, or go and join a competitor or something like that. So they'll want to know that. Something about your market, your processes, organisation structure, very important to show how the business can run without you being there. various things like that. I'll have to scan through, I'm really sorry about it. Any important assets? Yes, that's right. So if there's anything specific about your business, any intellectual property that's important for your business, then make sure you show that and highlight it in your document, because that's a way of trying to enhance value to it. So we suggest you put a guide price in when you put the sales document together. People argue against that and say let the market define it. The reason we suggest putting a guide price in is if you've been to get some professional advice around the value of the business, it should be a reasonably accurate valuation. It's never going to be precise, and if you don't put a value in, what we find is that you'll get people come to you with ridiculous try-on, we'll buy it for £1 or £100 or £1,000 or whatever else, and it'll just be embarrassing for all concerned and it'll waste your time. Talk about your handover commitment. What are you prepared to do post-sale? So how much support can you give to the new owners of the business? And any special terms that you might need in there. So I said before, this is mainly geared towards selling the entire business. If it was for a minority interest or for if a fund generation, then the sale document will be slightly different format. Don't make it too difficult to read, but make it readable, not too technical, but don't let it get too basic. Oh, here's a short story just to... So, does anybody know this? 2,200 people set off by boat from Ireland to New York. 700 arrived late. 1,500 departed their journey ahead of New York. That's a story. It's actually the story of the Titanic, but you'd never guess it from that, would you? So try and make your sale document explain what you want it to. Right, I'm going to have to scan through, I'm afraid, very quickly on these. Marketing the business depends on what you're looking for. Some people are very, very concerned about their name getting out in the marketplace, so you look at the process of a very specific targeted approach to businesses that you think will be interested. Others are not so concerned and would use organisations like Businesses for Sale, where you can advertise your business on a sort of a more widespread basis and seek prospective buyers. Buyer contact and negotiating the deal. If you try and do this by yourself, it's hard work. The buyer contact is very important for you so that you can explain the business and sell it to the prospective buyers. Negotiating can sometimes be difficult for you to deal with yourself because you get so hot during the process, and it's quite often useful to have an intermediary to act on your behalf and act between the two parties. There is a current vogue for buyers trying to buy for no money down, and I won't explain that in great detail, but what it means is basically they look at the company funding buying you out, which, as long as you understand that's the case, you might be perfectly happy with, but if you don't, try and identify that soon, because ordinarily one would expect the buyer to put some money into the deal at the very least. Only disclose your confidential information to the validated buyers and ones that you've got signed non-disclosure confidentiality agreements. Expect to set aside a decent stroke hell of a lot of time in the discussions process and the whole due diligence and the buyer meetings. And hopefully you'll get on with the buyers, because if you don't, it makes it somewhat difficult. I'm going to have to scan through. The heads of terms, when you get to that point, are not legally binding. They will only suggest what the outline terms of any arrangement are. The only legally binding part is when you've signed on the dotted line on that final sale agreement. Up until that, nothing is agreed. So unless it's in the sale agreement and it's signed by both the buyers and sellers, it ain't valid. And if you think you'd agreed something in the heads of terms and it doesn't get into the sale contract, it ain't there. And you can whinge as much as you like, but you won't have any legs to stand on, I'm afraid. Right. Oh, here we are. Yeah, quickly. I'll have to run through. It's not all about negotiating money, so very quickly here, this is a good one. So the Goldberg brothers, blah, 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 Lowell, Norman, Hiram and Max invented the first air conditioning unit for a car. They went to see a certain Henry Ford, showed him the unit in the car. Henry Ford got very, very excited. I don't know whether this story is true, but I'd love to think it is. Very excited about it. He offered them $3 million there and then. They said, no, we only want 2, but we want our name on every single air conditioning car that you make. He didn't accept that, and what they agreed to in the end was that he would pay £4 million, and that their first names would be shown on the air conditioning units only, which they thought was delightful, except that's what they came out with. Yeah, so Mr. Ford got away with this deal. All right. I think I'm probably run out of time now. Apologies for that. I'll take any questions anybody wants, or I'll be available outside if anybody wants anything after that. But thank you for your time, and I hope that's been somewhat useful for you anyway. All right, thank you all. Cheers.